What's going on, guys? This is Miasin and welcome to the OCG and Metagame Breakdown number 5 and 6. This time covering 82 top-performing decks from 17 tournaments that were held, during the span of what seems to be around 1 week. In Japan, mainland China, Taiwan, South Korea, etc. It's always the same thing. However, this will include the new structure deck of Dark Worlds, which could actually be very interesting. So before this video starts, make sure you like and subscribe. I would really appreciate that a lot. You have no idea. If we can get to 1,000 likes, I can guarantee you I'll keep making more OCG videos, TCG, metagame breakdowns, etc. Especially since we're going to be getting even more YCSs in the months to come. So that's actually always good news. And yeah, let's get right into it, actually. So what is the best deck right now? Tearlaments. I was not really surprised, not gonna lie. 40.2%. Goddamn, this is a lot. And Splight at 25.6%. Again, they lost Toad, but they have Union Carrier for the Dragon Buster Destruction Sword lock. So it kind of makes sense, but at the same time, when you don't really have an Omni Negate, even if you can Dragon Buster Destruction Sword lock your opponent, you still lose to generic stuff like Pankratops, Satrila, Fenrir, etc. So the deck really got worse than before, but it has a few nice win conditions that it can still utilize in order to make a lot of unprepared players lose, such as the untargetable, indestructible Mech Knight Crusadia Avermax that you can summon with IP Masquerena. And because of how ridiculously oppressive that is, Tearlaments really adapted their playstyle in order to defeat that appropriately. And as always, Exorcister, third best deck. Makes sense because it does have a relatively decent matchup against Tearlaments. It's just that Ishizu makes the deck so ridiculously good that even if you have a good matchup, you're still fighting from behind because of how unfairly powerful the deck is. And then after that, we have Dragon Link, Chaos, Bisted, Thunder Dragon, Endymion, Flunderies, Magician, Splight, Mr. Rune. Interesting. Virtual World, one of them with Brave because the Beatrice can send the Aquamancer and then you can banish it and get your combo going. Sword Soul Virtual World. Okay, alright. Lawn Mowing Adamantipator, Lawn Mowing Branded Bisted Despia, Lawn Mowing Infernoid, Lawn Mowing Tearlaments Thunder Dragon Punk Bisted. God, Jesus, this is crazy. Ishizu Naturia, very cute. Labyrinth, alright, let's freaking go. Odd Eyes Perform Pal Draco Slayer, very interesting. Tenyu Sword Soul, Trabrigade Lyrilusk, and not a single Dark World deck has managed to top. So this doesn't necessarily mean that the new Dark World monsters are bad or anything. It really just means that we need kind of more cards in order to make it, a deck that can really compete with the current metagame, because this is an unfair meta for any deck that isn't, like, degenerate. So you need to have a lot of redeemable qualities if you want to be able to catch up with this deck, because Ishizu Tearlaments is stupid. Like, even if Splight still had Toad, Ishizu Tearlaments would still be better. So in the TCG, right now, even though Splight might be the more appealing deck to play for most people, honestly, Tearlaments is probably the best investment that you can do in order to be really prepared when we will get those Ishizu cards. And again, everybody's playing Ishizu. Only like 2 decks are not playing Ishizu out of the 33 Tearlaments decks. So that really speaks volume. Anyways, now for the deck list. Actually, the explanation of Tearlaments. So this player, Tsangpok Man, went 8-1 and got first place in a 69-player tournament. But, it's still a 9-round tournament, so it really is relevant. Mech Knight Crusadia Avermax that is summoned with IP Masquerena is an absolute pain in the ass. So there are a few outs that people, kind of thought about. Either you go for Underworld Goddess in order to link it off, and then Underworld Goddess does not get shuffled back because it is unaffected by card effects that activated effects that do not very specifically target it. And the thing about the Avermax is that it does not target, so it will not work against Underworld Goddess. And furthermore, Underworld Goddess also bricks the rest of the board because it's kind of like a Dark Ruler no more on summon. And it also has another effect that is kind of like a Ghost Bell in a way. When your opponent tries to like revive back monster effects in the monsters in the grave, you can just negate once per turn. So it's a cute card, but it's really hard to summon. So the one way you get to Underworld Goddess going second is by going into the Dark Charmer, and then revive back your opponent's IP Masquerena that was used in order to link for the Avermax. And then all you really need is like 1 extra monster on your own field, and you're good to go. So you would have like an indestructible Underworld Goddess that is also unaffected by activate. It's actually pretty freaking crazy, which is really cool, but it's still a lot of commitment. So people decided to play another card, which is Borlo Dragon, a card that we haven't seen in a while. And again, this card is nasty because if you summon it with IP Masquerena, you're gonna have a Borlo Dragon that cannot be targeted, and cannot be freaking destroyed. That's ridiculous, man. And it's not like, you know, attacking over Borolo Dragon made any sense because it's a big boy. So you're really going to struggle a lot against this card. It can also make you lose, I believe, 500 attack and you can't respond or something like that. I forgot, but yeah, Borolo Dragon is absolutely no joke. So that's the way that people are kind of getting rid of Avramax. And also, they're stealing your Avramax. Now, one ruling that you will have to know once this interaction will come up is that the Avramax that was link summoned off of Masquerena from your opponent's field, once you steal it, you can't destroy the Avramax that you stole, but your opponent actually will be able to destroy, if I recall correctly. So that's actually a really unique interaction, but it might not work in your favor because if your opponent destroys his own Avramax, what's going to happen is that the Avramax will trigger. Actually, it won't be because it's not an opponent's card. So yeah, it's so much pressure, but it's definitely the kind of thing that you will really have to understand. Obviously, I believe if your opponent like link summons with the Avramax or something, then you have to worry because it's going to be by your own card, so it will trigger and get rid of your own card. So because it doesn't target, and that's something that might actually screw you over if you play incorrectly. And yeah, no, these are absolutely game-winning cards, and Borolo Dragon being able to like not be targeted is huge against cards like Satrila Fenrir and even Dino Wester Pancratops, even though it's not that relevant. But if you top deck it later on, then it just won't do anything. Now for the deck list, I want to say everything is extremely standard, except that Exchange of the Spirit. We've seen in the past people are really back and forth on whether they want to play it or not, because it's a little bit of a win more. It makes Gravekeeper Spirit way better, and it also makes Agido, Kelbeck a little better. But, I mean, if you draw it, it's only, like, good as a discard card because you're not actually using Exchange of the Spirit as a trap card. It really is just a card that makes your other cards better because they have a bonus effect if you have Exchange of the Spirit in your grave. It's kind of like how the Sky Striker cards become broken when you have 3 or more spells in your grave. And again, even though they can play 2 Cobb of the Graves, they're only choosing to play 1. They're not playing Crossout because they're really not trying to play too many hand traps. They're not playing Ash even though it negates Maxi. The deck can afford to not special summon 27 times per turn, so yeah, it's just really well equipped to beat about anything. The deck can handle, you know, Floodgates, etc. I don't know if the deck really deals with Mystic Mine right now, but it doesn't matter because Mystic Mine is banned in the OCG. Yeah, there's something that they're doing right, huh? And before I get dislikes from people who are obsessed with Mystic Mine in the TCG. And for their extra deck, 1 Lulu Karos, 1 Kaleido Heart, double Kit Kalos, 1 Entis, because you're not actually summoning this card, you're sending it with the Diviner of the Heralds, that you can summon it on your opponent's turn with the Splight Elf. And then Dark, because it can revive back your opponent's IP Masquerena, make an undestructible by card effect Borolo Dragon. And of course, the rank 4 Monsters Dweller Tempty for Dure, so that you can trigger the Shaylin and then fuse on your opponent's turn. Baguska, which is universally really good, especially if you get like Shiftered, because Splight is actually side decking Shifter, sometimes even main decking Shifter, so that you can go Baguska pass, and Splight basically goes pass, and then next turn you kill. And of course the Zeus and the rest is just self-explanatory. And the side deck, now Sphere Build is actually really interesting because even if your opponent has like Dragon Buster, Destruction Sword, Splight Elf, Splight Carrot, or Red, whatever, you just go Sphere mode and deal with everything in one shot. You can also have Regeki, which is also really nice against Splight because their only form of negation, that's going to be explained later on, is Splight Carrot and Solemn Judgment. And I guess to a certain extent, a Pointer of the Red Lotus sniping your one out if you only have one, but if you have multiples, then a Pointer of the Red Lotus should rather get rid of the engine cards and the starters so that you break temporarily, you have to pass turn, and then you might be able to follow up next turn as a Splight player. Now for the side deck, this is something that we're seeing very often. I keep forgetting the name of this card, but this is the Search on End phase. Either from the deck or hand, you get to search for any dragon monster during the turn it is summoned. And this card, the Druid Worm, if I recall correctly, it will be able to send a special summon monster upon controls to the grave when it is sent from the field to the grave. Well, rather if, because it won't miss timing. And the Crime, which is a searchable Omni-Negate that you can search in Tearlaments. Double Imperm, very interesting. We just don't really see things like that very often in the TCG, especially where people just side deck generic low-impact cards, quote-unquote, like Imperm. I guess some people just want to have more flexibility because if you play way too many Silver Bullets, you might just not be able to be dealing with that many decks. Because Silver Bullets, when I mention Silver Bullets, I'm talking about cards that are extremely good against like one deck, but garbage against other decks. Like Sphere Mode is insane against combo decks in general, but it's very bad against back row decks. So it is a silver bullet because you can't just play it universally against everyone. You can't really main deck a card like Sphere Mode effectively. But Pankratops is just a fantastic card that you can play against just about everyone. And another card that is very similar to Pankratops is, like I said, Xatri Fenrir. Both Pankratops and Xatri Fenrir are Earth attributes, and that's the reason why people are experimenting with the Asa, which is one of the sisters of Dark. It has the exact same effect, however, it is the Earth attribute instead of the Dark attribute. And again, we're going to be seeing this later on. Now for Splight, there are a few interesting things here, but the majority of it is not super complicated. So for the Splight engine, it's always the exact same, except that some people are on 1 red or on 2 reds, and either 0 pixies and 1 pixies. Personally, I like 1 pixies. It really does make sense because it allows you to just jump over big, powerful monsters. It never really sucks. At worst, it's like an extender, so why not? And then the 1 red, I mean, if people really are destroying you with Regeki and stuff like that, you might want to turbo out Carrot very often. So that's the reason why red is no longer the top priority. I really can understand that. And of course, the Nimble engine is now better than any other engine out there because you are now playing Splight Sprint, which is a Foolish Burial on summon, which allows you to send the Nimble Angler to summon Double Beaver from the deck, 2 level 2s, and then you can go for Gigantic Splight and get your engine started from there. And Toad being banned doesn't necessarily mean that Swap Frog is no longer good. Swap Frog is still a 1-card combo, it changed absolutely nothing. And again, Splight is now a deck that can easily incorporate good stuff cards that are just good to play. So Xatri Fenrir, again, this is kind of like a Photon Thrasher-esque Pankratops. So even if you're going first, this card is really good. Whereas Pankratops going first, it's going to be a dead card in your hand until you pass turn to your opponent. And then your opponent summons more monsters than you do, so that you can finally unbreak that Pankratops, unless you randomly get hit by Gamma. But it's not going to come up super often. And Splight is that kind of deck that unfortunately, well, or it doesn't really matter, but unlike Tearlaments, it really does have to play more generic cards like Ash, Crossout, Double Call by the Grave, cards that really allow you to supplement your engine a little more, because your engine cards in Splight might be a little less disgusting than in Ishizu Tearlaments, because in this deck, you have a lot of Ishizu and Tearlaments cards. You just demolish your opponent at the speed of light. It's not even funny. You go like mill 10 cards, bounce back a bunch of cards, fuse a bunch of times, synchro summon or Xyz summon, etc. In Splight, it might be a little less than that, so usually your end boards are less violent because, again, you're not making Toad anymore. You're doing other stuff like IP Masquerena with the Dragon Buster Destruction Sword Lock, so you want to be able to do like those half boards as well as having a few hand traps in your hand in order to make it a little harder to break. Notice how Anti-Spell is not seeing much play. I want to say the main reason for that is because of the fact that Dragon Buster Destruction Sword is an interruption in the spell and trap zone. So you're not really going to be breaking many boards if you're just negating monsters, not really, you know, cards in the spell and trap zone, whereas Regeki is actually insane, man. It takes care of just about anything. So Regeki is definitely no joke in a format where, you know, Splight can't consistently negate spells and traps. And as a matter of fact, I would say just negating cards is a little hard. And if you go activate Regeki right away against Splight, they either have to go IP Masquerena for Appaloosa, an indestructible Appaloosa, or go for the Avermax, but now people are actually cutting the Avermax because, as you can see, people are well, Ishizu Tearlaments players are extremely well equipped to defeat it. So, yeah. And a pointer of the Red Lotus Solemn Judgment, these are how you're going to be dealing with Regeki and board breakers in general so that you can protect your Dragon Buster Destruction Sword Lock. D-Shifter is the best hand trap against Ishizu Tearlaments. Unless they can make Baguska, they're usually not really doing anything. It's an extremely graveyard-heavy deck. And of course, Pankratops Zuking Alpha. Zuking Alpha being very, very good again against Splight. So there are way too many ways to deal with Splight right now. And the ways to deal against Tearlaments, they're very high impact, like D-Shifter, but there are not a lot of cards that are like that. So if you want to beat Tearlaments, you're either going to have to go first, which is not the kind of thing that you can have that much control over. You need to win a dice roll or lose in order to go first on a game 1 or 2 or 3. Or you're going to be having to draw like very powerful hand traps in high numbers, which is a little too unrealistic. So yeah, in conclusion, Tearlaments and Splight are still the first best decks, and the other decks are just getting completely demolished, so it's really not like... it's not a big contest, honestly. And again, as I said, Dark is extremely good, and Asa is also being played. being able to revive back the Pankratops as well as the Xatrila Fenrir. And now you might be thinking, well, this doesn't really come up too often, does it? Because Pankratops is just a one-of, and that is true, but at the same time, it's also not true because you're going to be mailing your opponent's Pankratops very often if you play Shizu Tearlaments, because your Kelbeck and Agido, they make both players mail 5 cards. So if you make your opponent mail either Xatrila Fenrir or Pankratops, you can go Asa using any Ishizu monster because they're all Earth, as well as any other monster on the field, revive it back, and it's basically an extra interruption on top of everything you already have. And if the Asa dies, you get to search an Ishizu card, which is ridiculous, man. This deck just does so much. Or even worse, oh my god, you can search Max C. Oh man, disgusting. So yeah, no, Ishizu Tearlaments is just too good. That's basically what every single one of my OCG metagame breakdown videos is always gonna be. It's the best deck, not even by a long shot, actually. It's by a long shot, not even by just a little bit of a margin. So yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. Let me know your thoughts about this meta in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys very soon. Peace.